What is the scariest thing you have ever seen in your life that you can't explain? I've shared this story on Reddit before, and I've been thinking about a lot lately. It's not exactly a scary thing I saw, but I still wonder about it all the time, so I'll share it here. My best friend and I would always talk about crazy dreams we had. Never thought much of it until he told me about one where he got hit by a car and died. We were about 15 or 16 when he told me about the dream. We were into conspiracies, stuff like aliens, paranormal, lucid dreaming, so we talk about stuff like that a lot. And he died right before he would have turned 20. He said he was riding a skateboard, wearing all black, when a car hit him and could see everyone at his funeral. He even said his crush was at his funeral and laughed about it. He just kept going on about how it was so real, and it really shook me up until eventually I forgot about it. Then, a few years later, after I'd long forgot about the dream he told me about, it happened for real. His crush was at his funeral, he did get hit by a car and die. He was wearing all black, like in the dream, his work clothes, and he was riding my skateboard. It was all true. I still don't know what to make of it all. Every single detail I remember from his dream came true, and I'm sure there's parts of it he told me that I don't remember. I felt crazy, I didn't tell anyone about. I just don't know why or how he saw it happen in his dream, and think, what if he never told me about it? It just left me with so many questions, but I guess now I have proof, at least to myself, that our souls go on after we die. I just wish I knew why he experienced that dream and told me about it. Like there had to be some kind of reason. I just think about how I wouldn't believe this story if I hadn't experienced it for myself. Has anyone ever experienced anything similar? Another user replied, "My grandfather experienced something very similar. One night, he had a very vivid dream about a plane crashing into the houses near Midway Airport in Chicago. In the dream, he was one of the first people at the crash site, and he pulled open the door to find that the captain had been decapitated. The next morning, he mentioned the dream to the rest of the family, and they all joked how it sure would be terrible because they lived right by there. A few weeks later, TWA Flight 595 crashed into the homes outside Midway. It was 5:30 in the morning, so my grandpa was on his way to work, but there wasn't a ton of other people out yet, so he ended up being one of the first on the scene. When he went to see if anyone needed help, he found a decapitated pilot in the cockpit. I can't verify now that that's how the pilot died, but the Chicago Tribune described burning gasoline running into roof gutters, a mother screaming for her babies, and firefighters collecting human limbs, so it doesn't seem too far off. Like sure, enough people have enough dreams that just by chance some of them might end up sort of happening, but the specificity of the details and the fact that he had told multiple family members about it beforehand, who all also remember this story, had always freaked him out. One time, when I was around 12 years old, I was riding my bike on the trails near a golf course. There's high tension power lines going through the park, so a clearing runs through the forest. A car pulled through the clearing and I noticed the back seat is full, but only the driver up front. They stop, everyone gets out of the car, and then the two men in the back seat start dragging the guy from the middle seat out of the car while he's screaming at the top of his lungs. They beat him up a bit and shot him twice, once in the gut and once in the head. They stuff the dead guy back in the back seat and everyone piles back into the car just as before, and off they go. I stayed hidden in the brush, dumbfounded and scared to death, until they were out of sight. I go over to where the car had been. No mess at all, just tire tracks and footprints, like it hadn't actually happened. I rode home and didn't tell anyone what I saw. After supper, everyone got into whatever they were doing, so I went to my parents' bathroom to use the phone, called 911 to report it, told them I wanted to remain anonymous, they thanked me for the report, and I hung up. Never heard anything about it on the news. They must have done a good job getting rid of the body, but I still find it weird that I couldn't see any remnants of what I'd just seen right in front of my own eyes. One time I was at a stoplight waiting to make a left turn. There's two turning lanes. I am in the inner lane and another car is in the outer lane. The light turns green, and as I'm turning, the car in the outer lane speeds up and makes a U-turn, but loses control and is about to hit me. Bracing for impact, I honked at the car and slammed the brakes in hopes to minimize the collision. I feel a cold splash from the iced tea I had in the cup holder and look down. When I look up, the light was still red, and my car and the other car are still waiting behind the traffic white line. When it turns green, I don't press the gas pedal, and sure enough, the car in outer lane speeds up and almost hits the inner cement island trying to correct the U-turn. As I wait, I look down and my tea is spilled all over. I don't know what or how it happened, but it freaked me out for days. I have no explanation on what happened. Needless to say, I now drive further to avoid that left turn. Another user commented, "It sounds like you experienced quantum immortality, the theory that you never actually die, but anytime you're about to, you are put into the alternate reality or dimension where you didn't die." It's a really mind-boggling and honestly kind of terrifying theory, if true, but there is so many stories that I've heard like yours that support this theory. It's definitely worth researching if you're interested. Roughly 15 years ago, I was in upstate New York with my uncle at our family house. It's pretty quiet and not a lot of people are up there. My uncle and I were outside when it started to downpour, so we went inside. We were looking out the front door together, and my uncle was commenting how hard it was raining. This is also pretty rural, so it's mostly pitch black out, with only our front house light illuminating the front area. As we are looking out the door, we both see someone on the road sort of speed walking. It's so dark, but their skin was so pale that we can see their hands sway as they walked, and then their face as they turned towards our house. All I remember seeing was that the face looked like it had no eyes. My uncle quickly shut the door and said not to worry, it was probably someone who got out, stuck in the rain. I was scared, but he calmed me down. I was little, so I don't remember too much after that, other than my uncle keeping watch for a while after that. I forgot about this story until years later when I brought it up to him, because I thought maybe it was a dream. His attitude changed when I brought it up, and he just said he remembered but didn't want to talk about it. I have never brought it back up to him, and to this day I still get a very uneasy and eerie feeling when thinking about it. So in college, I studied in the UK. I lived in a house with a group of other American students that had stories of the ghost of a girl who passed away while living there. I never believed in any of it, but it was fun to play along. The kitchen had one way in and out, and right after you entered the kitchen, to your right was a padlocked door to the cellar where she allegedly lived. I had the only key. We were all a little homesick near Thanksgiving, so we decided to do a meal together. This required some creative cooking schedules due to small appliances in the kitchen, so one girl who didn't have class the next day offered to stay up late to get the turkey going. We went into the cellar for the first time ever that evening to get larger cooking implements. We had dinner and it was great. Soon after it was over, we all went to our rooms and went to bed for the night. At 2:04 in the morning, I wake up to my door rattling like someone was pushing against it. I assumed it was a housemate who just went to the wrong door. Then, about 30 seconds later, I hear a scratchy female voice softly saying, "Hello?" every 5 seconds or so. My window was open, and it sounded like it was coming from outside, so I get up to close my window as I assume it's some drunk girl walking back from the pub. I get to the window, and there's no one there, and then I hear, "Hello?" Clear as a bell behind me, my door rattles again and goes silent. I've had night terrors before and hallucinate when I have even a mild fever, so I assume I'm still asleep and lay back down. The next morning at 7 a.m, the girl who's cooking tells me, "I had the creepiest night. Around 1:50, I heard footsteps coming up the cellar stairs, then the door rattled. Then at around 2:10, the door rattled again and I heard footsteps coming down." She told me this before I had said anything to anyone about what I'd experienced. When I was a child, both my parents went to work early, so they would drop me off at my grandmother's to eat breakfast and go to school from there. My grandmother died my junior year in high school, and I started coming straight home from school. During this time, my mother started complaining that when she would get home from work, the receiver of the phone next to her bed was left off the base. I wasn't using the phone, but she would insist I must have because the phone was hung up properly when she left for work. One day, I got home a little early. Now, I need to pause and tell you about the layout of our apartment. From the front door, it looked directly into the living room, dining room, the door to the kitchen, and the short hallway that led to my parents' bedroom and my bedroom. There was no other door. The windows were old-fashioned, narrow casement windows with screens, and we were on the 3rd floor. Anyway, as soon as I walked in the door, I clearly heard 2 footsteps in my parents' bedroom. I dropped my school bag and foolishly ran to the bedroom. It wasn't far and took only a few seconds. I got to the bedroom and no one was there. However, I immediately noticed that the receiver of the phone on my mother's bedside table was on the floor. It was placed so that the cord to the base was stretched out as far as it could go. I later tried to replicate the placement by shaking the table, tipping the phone, etc. I could never get the receiver off the base. When I finally resorted to knocking it off with a finger, it would fall on the table or next to it. The only way I could replicate the placement of the receiver where I found it was to carefully stretch the cord, place it, and hold it for a few moments. It could not have gotten to that spot by accident. When I found the phone, I hung it up and it immediately rang. I answered it and it was my dad. He asked what was wrong. I asked him why he asked. He said he had called and someone answered the phone but they never said anything. He finally hung up and had been trying to call back and only got through after I hung up the phone. I've never figured out what happened. I definitely heard footsteps and I'm just as certain there was no one there. No one went by me. The windows in the bedroom were not disturbed and my parents had too much stuff under the bed and in the closet for anyone bigger than an infant to hide in either spot. Also, after this, my mother never found the phone disturbed again. This story happened around 1998. My family and I had just moved into an old clapboard house on the edge of town. It had a huge backyard with a 6-foot wooden privacy fence on one side and a metal chain link fence about 4.5 feet high around the other 3 sides of the yard. Neighbors on one side, the privacy fence, a small grass alley that ran behind the back with a street light, and then another yard, etc. Our bedroom was an old converted sunroom on the back of the house that faces the backyard. It had floor-to-ceiling windows all along the back wall, looking into the backyard. We didn't have many options as to where to place our beds, so my headboard was against the windows, and my brother's bed was about 8 feet away, with his headboard against the opposite wall, with the foot of the bed facing the windows. One night, we were up pretty late. I was in my bed, and he was in his, just talking about random things, when suddenly he got quiet. I figured he fell asleep, but then I heard him whispering in a shaky breath, so I said, "What?" And I hear him whisper again. So again I'm like, "Speak up, I can't hear you." And he goes, "Don't move and be quiet," in a forced whisper. I think he's messing with me, so I'm looking at him, and mind you, my head is to the windows, and he's pointing into the backyard behind my bed. So I quickly sit up and turn around and see this huge dog head staring almost nose to glass through the window right behind my bed. I'm almost nose to nose with this thing, just a single pane of glass and about 10 inches of empty air separate me from this thing. Now, when I say I screamed, I mean I screamed. Not my proudest moment, but hey, I was like 10 years old. Well, anyway, the thing quickly ducked under the window and then ran to the side of the yard and jumped the 4.5-foot chain link fence and bolted off into the darkness. My dad came running into the room with our mum right on his heels. We were able to get out that something was looking through our window, so our dad ran back to his room and grabbed his shotgun and then headed out the side door of the house and into the backyard. Unfortunately, he didn't find anything, wrote it off as I had a nightmare, and my brother wouldn't admit to seeing anything. So I took the blame and was told to quit messing around, go back to bed, typical parent response, etc. Well, later that night, maybe an hour or so, after I begged my parents to let me sleep in the living room because leaving the house wasn't an option, and still being refused, I was made to sleep in my room. So again, my brother and I are in our room with these floor-to-ceiling windows. We are just completely rattled. We are both huddled in his bed, staring out the windows, when we see this thing come walking along the chain link fence on all fours, and the fence only comes up to its mid-shoulder, so this thing is huge. It sniffs the ground, does a few circles, and then hops the fence into the backyard like it's nothing. It walks over to the window and again gets nose to the glass like it's trying to see in. We are panicking the whole time while my brother is like, "Fuck this," and soon as he steps off the bed, we hear this loud bang, and there is a flash of light. The thing at the windows gets knocked sideways, and without even missing a beat, it turns and runs across the full length of the backyard, jumps the back chain link fence, clears the fence, the alleyway, and then lands in the back neighbor's yard. This is easily a 15 to 20 foot jump minimum, clearing their fence like it was nothing, and was gone at a dead run, up beside that house and off into the darkness on the other side. My dad comes tearing around the side of the house with his shotgun in hand and makes a mad dash for the side door and slams it shut behind him. He is screaming and hollering. We gotta go. We pack up and head to a hotel that night. My mom refused to believe we saw what we said we saw, and we only lived there for about 6 months. It rattled my dad so much that he didn't even want to come back. He told my mom that we were just gonna move the next day, but she wouldn't allow it. After about 6 months, she conceded, and we moved. Mind you, this is in the coastal plains region of Texas. We have no large wild canines here. We have stray dogs and coyotes, but nothing that would even remotely touch on how big this thing was. My dad swears he shot that thing with a slug from about 15 feet away with his 12 gauge shotgun right underneath its left arm, hitting it in the ribs where its vital organs are, and nothing, it just ran off. He said the thing that freaked him out the most was that when he saw the thing jump the fence, it walked towards our window crouched, but still on its hind legs. It wasn't walking on all fours, and then when it got to our window, it stood up straighter, and he could tell that while it looked like a dog, its body was shaped wrong. He said it looked like a really stocky person wearing a dog suit, but he could tell it wasn't a suit. Also that when it was walking in circles, sniffing the ground, before coming into our yard the second time, it wasn't actually sniffing the ground for a scent. It was staring at our window with its face to the ground. It was acting like it was sniffing for a scent, almost as if it was playing a part to see if anyone would notice. He said he's had dogs his whole life, and everything about what it was doing was wrong. A while later, I asked my dad why he was in the backyard, if he thought I was having a nightmare, and he told me my brother is the one that gave it away. He said with how panicked I looked, that my brother was almost white as a sheet and wouldn't take his eyes off the window. He said, "Your brother has never looked so scared and never been one with just making stuff up." So after going back to his room with my mom, as he was laying there thinking about it, he decided that if my brother was as white as he was, then we had to have seen something. So he grabbed his gun in case he had to scare some creeper out of our yard, and figured he was going to go through the garage and out by the far side of the house and sneak to the corner to see if someone was peeking in our windows or if someone was actually messing with us. He never actually thought we saw a huge dog-looking thing, just that maybe with it being dark outside and us being kids with overactive imaginations, maybe we just mistook someone as something. But when he saw that thing come up the side fence, and with the street light in the back alley lighting up the backyard, he saw it, and it freaked him out. He was gonna creep back inside until it went up to our window. And he said as it stood up, he just got this instant feeling of just dread, like something was gonna happen to us. If you guys like this video, please be sure to drop a like and subscribe, and also check out my TikTok account, Scary Time. That is linked in the description below. And as always, stay scary.